Welcome, everybody. We are so grateful that you came back to tune into another episode of Balanced Relationships, where we can have balance in all our relationships. And today we have our first guest for our podcast. Her name is Dionne Nichols Germain. Round of applause. Hi,
Good to
Dionne.
be
How are you?
here. I am great. Doing wonderful. Happy to be with you, ladies.
We are happy to have you. So, I am going to read through your bio and share with the people who you are, and then we'll get right into this episode. So, Dionne Nichols Germain, aka the Joy Coach, is a professional life and leadership coach. She's inspired by her own personal story of reinvention, and she founded Live Your Best Life for You, which is a personal development and leadership training and speaking business, serving an international clientele, dedicated to supporting busy executives and entrepreneurs to reach their full potential and excel at work, home, and their relationships. So, the holistic approach. Dionne is also the author of the 90-Day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal for High Performing Executives. Woohoo! We are so grateful that you are here to talk with us today. You can learn more about the Conquering Unforgiveness movement through her Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn information. We will share that information in the show notes. But now we're going to get in and dive into some questions and talking with Dionne.
So, Dionne, I am really excited to have you here with us today. I've heard such great things about your book, and I'm excited to have you here so you can start to talk a little bit more about what kind of got you into this journey of helping folks with forgiveness. So, I want to know what drew you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what drew you to providing content on forgiveness?
Well, I'll tell you this. Nobody just signs up for this. I can't say I was just drawn to teaching one of the hardest topics out there, right? Forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
But God kept giving me the signs. So I ran away for a little while, I can't lie.
Mm-hmm.
But as you go through life and you start connecting the dots, um, it all culminated at a women's retreat. So it was a faith-based
Okay.
retreat,
Mm-hmm.
40 women out in the desert, out in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Mm.
There were several activities for each group to do. And actually, it was this particular activity that really said, okay, this is it. I got to give a full yes to my calling.
Right.
Basically, we all had to pull a key out of a chest and then talk about why that key was important to us, what it meant to us. Remember, 40 women, and I would pull the forgiveness key.
Mm. God say,
Wow.
can't run for me no more.
Not
Oh
running.
my God. So in front of 40 women, I declared I would dig my ditch
Mm.
and create the course. That was the
Yes.
first declaration.
Okay.
And that was September of 2022. So by December, I actually did facilitate my first workshop. And then by the following year, by November of last year, Thanksgiving, I published the journal, the 90-Day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal. And
Beautiful.
I believe God was calling me to teach on the power of forgiveness. One, there's my own personal testimony as to why
Mm-hmm.
I believe that forgiveness, it just unlocks so much when it comes to healing, just the level of possibility that becomes available when you forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was interesting enough, as a coach, so I'm also a life and leadership coach, as Jasmine
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, working with execs across nations. I just kept hearing the same recurring themes that just as humans, we're really hard on ourselves.
Mm.
And we could have a different experience.
Right.
So, as for my own story, in terms of my relationship with my son's father, we were together for over 17 years, college sweethearts. Came to New York with big dreams from our small town and thought we were going to get married, all that stuff, you know? And in about the 10-year mark, we had a son. Um, and unfortunately, 5 months into my pregnancy, I found out that there was infidelity.
Mm.
But I really wanted my son to have both parents. I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
growing up. I was
Right.
willing to make it work. Unfortunately, the infidelity didn't stop. I really did try. At some point, I found out there was a secret child. I still chose to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but unfortunately, even with all of that, the infidelity did not stop.
Mm.
And at some point, I had to make the decision
Right.
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
was worthy of more, that my son was worthy of being exposed to a healthier environment, atmosphere, one that's loving
Yes.
and genuine. Um, but thankfully, even though I decided to leave, uh, by choosing forgiveness, we were able to co-create the most beautiful, healthy, loving co-parenting relationship.
I love it.
And so from that, I mean, we just flew our son off to college together.
Mm-hmm.
He's now a sophomore. We could take
Yes.
family trips. We could have, we actually did intentionally have Sunday dinner almost every Sunday the year he was heading back to
Mm.
college.
Wow.
We were able to
Mm-hmm.
do that, go to the
Right.
teacher conference. My son knew that both his parents were a united front and had his back.
Yes.
And that
Nice.
was my commitment.
Nice.
Not to
Yes.
mention, I also knew for me to let for my next chapter, if you will, I would have to let go of the resentment, the anger, to make room for the new.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also at that point in my life where I just felt that it was a pivotal time. I'd worked in fashion that was the dream for over 20 years. And I knew there was more. It did lead me to coaching, but there was a whole iteration where, I ended up launching a financial literacy youth program with my son's father.
Mm-hmm.
We've helped thousands of young people. From that, a 5-star rated podcast was
Yes.
signed to a network. Like all of this took place because I was able to forgive.
Definitely.
We wrote our legacy. Our son got to see both parents putting good into the world.
Wow.
I love that.
Wow.
I love that. I love that.
Yes.
I work with families on a regular basis, helping them to co-parent effectively and have the blended family dynamic that's healthy and thriving. So I just love your story and your testimony of how
Yes.
forgiveness helped you to have this thriving, healthy family dynamic that was good for you as an individual and good for your son. So that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, Now, help me to understand. I believe you did some research to learn the science of forgiveness, and you share this in your book. So, can you tell us more about the science of forgiveness?
Sure. So I've mentioned some of the emotional aspects. There's the spiritual aspect, right? Just even from manifesting what we want in our lives, if we're harboring unforgiveness. So you can see there's the emotional, the spiritual, there's the physical, as well as the emotional impacts that take place when we forgive. And there's so much science behind this to
Mhm.
show by practicing forgiveness, it impacts all of those things.
It does.
And the bulk of it, as we know, starts with the brain.
Hmm.
And the crux of it is it's the rumination. When we are constantly ruminating over the negative things and emotions, it's actually rewiring our brains. It's activating the neural pathways that are the same ones as if we were touching, the hot stove. It's like we keep going back to touch the hot stove over and over again. That's the pathway in our brain that we are activating every time we ruminate
Yes.
over and over again over that negative thing. And then by doing that, that increases the cortisol levels in our bodies,
Hmm.
which is what causes stress,
Yes.
which then leads to uh, heart issues, higher blood pressure. It impacts our sleep. Then there's the things that people don't realize. It can impact your memory, your digestive, your
Hmm.
immune system, just by harboring forgiveness. But the opposite is when you do, you mitigate all of those things.
Wow.
Thank you
There's
so much for
You're
sharing
welcome.
that.
You're welcome. And there's tons of studies just in terms of
Yes.
um, John Hopkins does a lot of work. And was a prolonged study of women. She was a psychiatrist, Karen Katz, I believe her name is. And what she noticed with her patients, mostly women,
Mhm.
who had bipolar and depression, unforgiveness or the lack of that the ability to forgive
Mm.
Mhm.
was a through line
Hmm.
for patients. So just
Wow.
give you a little this, I can nerd out on this stuff, but just touch of
Yes.
how it goes physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually when we don't forgive.
Very, very
Yes.
powerful.
Most definitely. And I'm going to talk on page 9. It says in the book, I'm reading directly from the book, the process of forgiveness actively lowers rumination. It rewires your brain so that it doesn't dwell on the negative. The results, according to a 2023 international study on the practice of forgiveness, is better mental and overall well-being. So just what you said, that is definitely a benefit. Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
reaching.
Most definitely.
And we can go beyond that because it impacts us relationally, it impacts us financially. All of this harboring of difficult emotions and heavy hurts and betrayals, it permeates every area of our lives.
Hmm.
And so we walk through and give people a call to action and we give them resources. So definitely today's resource is going to be your journey, the 90-day Conquering Unforgiveness journal. But what I like you to walk people through, what are the first steps for forgiveness? So you can talk us through your book, but I want people to be able to walk away to say, you know what, I need to take some first steps.
Mhm.
And again, everyone, the journal is going to definitely be a resource that's very, very essential in your life. But just walk people through some of the first steps to forgiveness.
Sure. Well, there can be no forgiveness if there isn't willingness. So forgiveness starts there. You have to be ready. Nobody can tell you when. So I want to just put that out there. There's a whole reframing, I think, of what forgiveness is in terms of shifting and re-empowering yourself as to what the true meaning of forgiveness is. 'Cause I think that's a lot of times what holds people back from forgiving. And so again, I'll say, if you take nothing else from this conversation today, forgiveness is for you.
Hmm.
That's a huge shift
Yes,
to
yes.
beginning to prime yourself to even being willing to forgive.
Right. Hmm.
Because there's so many myths, right? That if I forgive, that means the other person gets off, right? They're off the hook if I forgive, or if I forgive, what happened to me no longer is valid.
Right.
So I'm going to hold
Yes,
on
yes.
to this. I'd rather have the anger because that gives me the comfort to know that it still
Mhm.
has meaning, right? And so, but at the end of the day, it's actually what's killing you.
Correct.
It's actually what is really hurting you by holding on to that thing. Uh,
Yes.
what will people think? Right? Holds people back. Like if I had gone with what people think, because man, my family, my friends, they were angry with what my son's father did.
Hmm.
And you're going to go into business with him too and launch a nonprofit.
Right.
But because I went against what people think, sometimes they're not ready. Look what I was able to create because I chose forgiveness. So
So
that's
first things first is choosing, like being willing and choosing that you are going to do this for yourself.
yeah. Forgiveness is a conscious choice. It's not a feeling. It's a conscious choice. It's an active process.
Hmm.
Forgetting is passive. And if we're just trying to forget things, the minute we hear their voice and we don't actually do the work, we're right back where we started.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So it's a conscious decision, regardless if they are deserving
Hmm.
of your forgiveness. So you can release the negative emotion and no longer defining your life by those negative situations so you can be free.
Right.
so you can be healthy. So
Very
that's the
good.
first thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also say there are many routes or routes to home, right? So for some, it might be their faith and starting there. It could be prayer, it could be an anchoring scripture. That was a big one for me
Mm-hmm.
when I was going through a difficult time with my husband, where I had to choose forgiveness. It's
Mhm.
sensitive now because he's still going through a custody case. Um, However, uh, it was an anchoring scripture, Exodus
Mm-hmm.
14:14. The Lord himself will fight for me, just stay calm.
Yes, yes.
So releasing the false control, right? To keep positive, keep moving forward, right? And allowing myself to get some elevation on the situation so I could forgive. So faith might be another way to access it. Gratitude is huge.
It
I'm
is.
Yes,
a big
yes.
proponent of gratitude. Let's just say you started that and just practicing that daily. That
Mm.
again wires your brain. So even when there are negative situations and difficult things that come up, you've already trained your brain to look for the good, to find the lesson, to
Yes,
build that growth mindset, right? And no one's saying not taking time to actually process your emotions. That is key to forgiveness.
it is.
Yes.
Facing what is, actually doing the work to process. And no one says you have to do this alone, by the way. I want to preface that. Perhaps you might need therapy. Perhaps it's a coach, some kind of group counseling. So we don't have to go it alone,
Yes.
right? But these are some of the first steps you can take, getting in community, right?
Mhm.
Um, to begin that forgiveness process. You'll see in my book, affirmations, another way to start priming your heart and opening your heart up to that,
Yes.
concept of forgiveness. We know what we
Awesome.
speak for our lives or what we speak to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is close to what
Yes.
we want to be.
Well, thank you so much, Dionne. You've dropped so many nuggets that our listeners are going to be able to walk away with and actually start applying it and taking note of why it's so important to start applying it, which can help
Yes.
with their willingness. Because, listen, we know and we hear the body keep score. So, as much as we're holding on to things and we're harboring unforgiveness in our hearts, it's impacting every part of us. So I love that you were able to share the science behind it and then the
Mhm.
steps towards how we can start this journey to help ourselves and help all of ourselves to be able to have those balanced relationships overall. So I
Yes.
truly appreciate you coming on to share with
Yes.
us today. Before I
Yes.
let you go, I really want folks to be able to stay connected with you. So
Mhm.
can you share with us how can folks stay connected?
Oh, well, certainly visit me at www.liveyourbestlifeforyou.com. That's my website. You'll find the whole scope there. Feel free to go to my social media platforms. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook at Dionne Nichols. And then if you want to join the movement, and stay up to
Yes.
date on events. I just finished a really great book launch in New York. I have a 3-day Forgiveness is Freedom challenge coming up this week. So if you
Nice.
want to keep up with what I'm up to, resources, etc., definitely go to the link. It's called the conqueringunforgivenessmovement.com. I know it's a mouthful. And that way you'll get into the loop. You'll get on my newsletter and
Nice.
you'll stay up to date. And yeah, definitely go to Amazon.com, check out the book. I always say, buy
Yes. I was just gonna
there.
say,
Yes, it's a
get the
movement.
book, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely a movement. Yes.
Beautiful.
So thank
Add
you so
all
much
of those
again.
things into the show notes so they'll
Yes,
be
we
able to
will.
have easy access to it.
Mhm.
Jasmine, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So again, you heard it here. get the book, The 90-Day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal by Dionne Nichols Germain. We want to say thank you, a big shout out to you for being willing to take that step and be the movement, the leader to the movement for forgiveness. So, in order for us to have balanced relationships and stay balanced, forgiveness is definitely a key that you want to put in your arsenal, everyone. So until next time, stay balanced. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Stay balanced.
Bye.